Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card is a pop-up card that is actually very easy to make with this die that I have from Lawn Fawn. So here's how it works. Here's the card on the outside. You open it up and you can see there's multiple levels of hillsides here. And I just attached a bunch of stamps from the herd by My Favorite Things. So I'm going to start here by showing you, here is the die that I use from Lawn Fawn. It's officially called Stitched Hillside Pop-Ups. And then of course here's from the herd, which has a lot of cute little animals in it, and I'm going to stamp a bunch of them and color them with Copic markers. The first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of garden green cardstock and wild wasabi cardstock. I'm going to cut both of those out with my die. The green one, I just am using it to create an additional hill in the background. So it has a scored area that I'm not going to score so that my hill is higher, and then I'll just cut off those tabs on the top. Now to fold this wild wasabi one, this is my main hillside. So there's one at the bottom, and I'm going to fold it toward the back. I'm going to use my bone folder to make sure I get a nice crisp fold. And then I'm going to take the front pieces and fold down the tabs at the top, and they're dotted on the top, so it's really easy to do. So I have 3 of those, and then this one that's in between the hills, there's another score line that I'm going to fold inward so that my second hill is in the back. And then these other ones at the top, I'm just going to fold them down, and these are the ones that are going to attach to the back of the card. And those are all the folds that you need to make. So just make sure they're nice and folded down pretty well. I'm trying to position it here so that I could hold it up and you could see how it actually appears in the card. So I'm just kind of squeezing them together here. So I'm going to hold it up so you can see that there's 2 layers that attach to the card. I'm going to go ahead and put these pieces onto my card base, which is a piece of Soft Sky cardstock by Stampin' Up. It's just an A2 size. I'm going to put some Tombow Mono Multi Glue on the garden green piece, which is my tall hillside, and I'm going to put it down on the back of the card, the top of the card when you open it. And now it's time to glue down these hillsides. So I'm going to take that tab that was at the very bottom, and it's kind of the bottom of my die cut, and I'm going to put some glue on the bottom, and then I'm going to face it so that the hillsides are toward me, and the bottom piece that I'm gluing in, the very edge, is on the crease of my card base. So I'm going to put it right there where the green garden green comes in, and press it down, make sure it's adhered nicely. And that's the bottom part. Now for the top part, I'm going to show you how this works. So you flatten the whole thing down, like the whole thing. Now I'm going to take this extra hillside and pull it up. Then I'm going to take my tabs and press them both down toward the inside of the card. And that's all there is to it. So once you get that folded down, you're just going to hold it with your fingers. I'm going to take some Tombow glue and put it right there at just the top pieces of those top tabs. And I'm using this glue because it's really strong. You don't want to go too close to the edge. You don't want it seeping out because it is tacky when it dries. And I don't need any of that because then it'll affect the opening and closing of my card. So I'm going to press that down firmly until I feel like it's stuck, and then I'll open it up and everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. So it's really easy to put this die together and adhere it to a card base. I wanted to add a little bit of contrast, so I'm going to take my Landscape Trio set of dies by Mama Elephant. I'll take this cloud die. It's also stitched just like the hillsides are, so they'll match. And I have some Neenah cardstock, and I'm just going to cut a little bit of a cloud line from the top. And I'm going to put some Tombow glue again on this one because it has a lot of curves in it, and that way I can get into all the different areas. And then I put it right there at the top edge of the card and press it down. And that is basically all there is to creating kind of the structure of this card. The next step is to put all of the little pieces in. So I'm going to stamp my animals onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm stamping all these chicks here, but I'm actually going to do them differently. So I'm going to restamp those later. But anyway, so I'm going to whip through this coloring. I'm going to do my cow with C9 and C6, just some really dark gray, almost black colors. I'm just going to color in the patches here on the cow, and I'm going to let that dry before I do the face of the cow. For my pigs, I just wanted a light pink, so I just took the RV10, it's just a really light pink, filled everything else in with the RV00, and I also colored his nose with the RV00, and then I took a C1 and just kind of dotted it a little bit on the lower left-hand side, just to make it look a little bit different than the rest of him. And then I colored over it with the RV00 to blend it in a little bit more. So I have 3 pigs and I did them all the exact same way. And then I colored my chicken. The top is just a quick coloring of W5 first, then W3, kind of moving in a little bit, and then finally W1. Now whenever I do a body of an animal that I want to be white, I take my W1, it's a very warm gray, very light color, and just color the edges, and I'm going to color under his head here because there'll be a little bit of a shadow under his head. And then I take a 0, which is a colorless blender, and what I'm going to do is just color the edge of that W1 that I just applied. The colorless blender doesn't actually remove color, it just pushes color away. So what I'm doing here is I'm pushing the color away from the inside of the animal and toward the edge of the animal to create a shadow. I added a little bit more of that W1 on the wing and then blended it with the 0. And then just some color here, some Y17 on his beak and his feet, and then some R27 on the top of his head. For the trough, I'm just using 3 different colors of brown. I'm going to color my darkest along the edges and move a little bit in. Then I'll take my medium color and move a little bit further in. And then finally with my lightest, I just sort of blend it, whatever was left over, and push it back out over the edge to make sure it's all blended together. For the haystack, I'm going to start with my E99. It's just kind of a brownish orangey color, and I did the entire bottom first because that's going to be the darkest at the bottom of the stack, and then I'm coloring in underneath these sort of layers of straw. And so I'm also connecting the ones that haven't shown an image just to make sure there's continuity in the stack. Now I've got my YR24, and that's just my medium color. I'm going to color the whole bottom, and then I'm just going to extend that E99 down just a little bit and connect it in between the different images on the stack that aren't totally filled in. And then I'll go back in with my Y21, it's my final color, and just fill in everything that I haven't colored yet. And it's looking very, very smooth, and I know the top is going to be a little bit too bright with all this Y21, but I'm just going to get this layer down first, and then I'll take my medium color again, the YR24, and I'm going to color the edge a little bit just to kind of darken this Y21 a little bit. And then you can see I'm adding dots because the straw is not smooth, it's very textured, so I want to show that there's texture here. So I'm going to dot it in all the different areas that I have Y21. I'm going to go back over those with my YR24 and just add those dots, and just makes it look a little bit more realistic. And then finally, I wanted to add a little bit more of the medium color at the top. It's just a little bit too bright, so I added just a thicker layer of dots in the middle there. And then finally, to kind of smooth out those dots so they don't look like marker dots, I took the Y21 and just went over all the dots to just kind of make sure that they blended. Now for the chicks, this is really simple, just a Y15 along the left side and the bottom, and then I took my Y11 and I just colored the rest in. And I did this on all of them, but you know, I'm going to go back and restamp all these later, but I'm going to color them in the same way. Now it's time to do the face of the cows now that my blacks have dried, and I'm using E02 to go around the edge, and then I'm going to take E00 and color the rest in. You can see that even though I let the grays dry, it still was bleeding a little bit over there by his eye. But anyway, whatever. So once I'm done coloring with the E's, I decided I wanted a little bit more of a pinkish hue. And this is something you can do if you don't have the exact colors that match what you want to do. I took an RV00, it's a very light pink, and I'm covering over the whole thing, and it's going to give it just a little bit of a tint of pink. And that's the color that I'm really looking for his face. Now when I colored over his eye, it kind of faded a little bit, so I took a pen and I colored it in a little darker. I don't have the dies that go with the set, so I'm just going to cut them out with a scissor. So here is where I restamped those birds and colored them in. I wanted to have them all along a line because I'm going to create a tab that's going to help me prop these up on top of the hill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut around the bird at the top, and I'm going to leave a piece right underneath him that extends all the way downward. So you can see when I'm finished here how it looks. I cut off his feet and the little hair at the top just to make it easier. But now I have this tab that I can put behind the hill, and it'll make the bird look like it's actually walking on top of the hill. So I did that on 5 of these different birds. And that last one is going to be on the back of the card, so I don't need it. I did the same type of thing with the trough so that I would have some space to glue the straw onto it. So I just put some Tombow glue on the top where that white was, and I pressed down my stack of straw. Now before I put all these pieces actually onto the card, I want to put my sentiment on so I know exactly where it's going to go and I don't block it in any way. I'm going to stamp it in the back here very carefully with some Hero Art black ink. I usually use VersaFine Black Onyx ink for this, but I've been really having a bad habit of smudging my ink all the time, and that ink takes longer to dry, so I've been using more dye inks for my sentiments recently. So the straw I'm going to put right in front of that tab so that it'll block the tab when somebody opens it up. And to adhere them down securely, you can just close the card and it'll just press down to make sure that glue is really sticking well. I did the same thing with the pigs. I'm going to have them half on, half off the hill, so I just put some glue at the bottom. And for the second one, I put it next to the other one, but a little bit lower just so they'd be at a different height. And then for the third one, I put a dimensional to pop him up in the front. Now it's time to add my chicks. So I'm going to kind of make sure that my tab's not too long, and it is. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off here, and then I'll take a Zig 2-way glue pen and put it on the front of that tab, and then I can position it right behind the hill. And what I did was I held it with one hand and I squeezed it with the other hand. And this glue is really quick to dry, quick to stick, and so you can see I just held it for maybe a second or two. This is real time, and you can see how it sticks really well. I didn't use the Tombow glue because it's tacky when it's dry, and I was afraid with this small area that I might get some outside my tab. So I'm going to add my cow here in the upper left hill, and I'm going to use some dimensionals to do that so he's popping up a little bit. And then I cut another dimensional into a smaller piece to put behind my final chick, and I put that guy right next to my cow. And so that is the inside of the card, completely finished. It was pretty easy to do. The only time-consuming parts were all the coloring. So if you're not going to be coloring your pieces, you could actually do this a lot faster. For the front of the card, I took some Neenah cardstock and stamped the horse from that same set with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, same ink I've been using. And then I'm going to color him with Copics pretty quickly here. I fast-forwarded this. I've just got 3 colors of brown. And for his mane and his tail, I'm actually using the E31, which is the lightest color. So I'm not going to introduce any other additional colors. And then I just did his hoofs in the E37, which is the darkest color. For his face, I added the E30, which is just 1 color lighter than the E31. And then for my grass, I just kind of flicked up 2 different shades of green so that he had something to stand on. I'm going to have this horse hold a balloon. So I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to cut all the way around his nose here so that it pops up. Here, I'm going to slow it down so you can see this popping up, and I can just put my thread right in there. So for my balloon, I'm using this Celebration Time. It's just a balloon set by Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to die cut it out of some real red cardstock. And then I took some cherry cobbler and a sponge dauber, and I just inked up the edges. It's just 1 shade darker than the real red. And now I'm going to take some linen thread, and this is really nice pliable thread. And so I'm preparing my loop for my first knot, and I'm going to put a little bit of the 2-way glue pen on the edge there. And then I'm going to place that circle that I've prepared over the little bottom part of the balloon, and I need to make it a little smaller, I think, before I start this, but you just hold it with your fingers and squeeze the thread until it's tight around that bottom part of the balloon, and the zig glue will hold it in place pretty well. So I'm going to tie it pretty tight, and then I'm going to prepare the next knot so that the string that hangs down is actually facing downward, so that way when you pull it, it just naturally goes toward the horse. And the linen thread is easy to kind of bend around and place where you want it, so that's why I use this thread a lot. So I'm going to cut off the excess here at the top of the balloon, and then my balloon string is good to go. I used a Stampin' Up! Chalk marker. It's just kind of like a white pen to draw a little reflection here on the balloon. And then I'm going to take my horse panel and put some HEG tape runner on the back and put it onto a piece of early espresso cardstock by Stampin' Up. And then after I did this, I realized I probably should have put the balloon in his mouth first because I need to pop his nose up so that I could get the balloon string in there. So I'm thinking about this now. And so I decided I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife and try to get it in, because you can see it's kind of hard to get in. It's stuck there. So luckily I didn't have any adhesive. I thought about that beforehand underneath him. So I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife, kind of prop it up a little bit and stick the thread inside. And then I'll put a dimensional on the back of the balloon and I'll position it where I want it. And once I have the balloon down, then I can tighten the string as much as I need to, and just kind of pick up his face a little bit just to make sure that my thread doesn't unravel or anything. So I'll cut off that excess, and now this panel is ready to go. I'm just going to put some ATG tape runner on the back and put it on the front of my card a little bit off center to make it interesting. And so that is the card. So when you open it, it's so fun on the inside. It's such a cute little card. The way the hills are set up, how you have multiple layers. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, something a little bit different, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.